All right, we are live in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Welcome in, friends. Welcome back to Notes from the Edge. I'm your host, Lisa Lacey. This is a space where we talk about the things that we're not talking about, but we need to, the conversations we should have been having all along. And I've got a special guest. He and I just connected today, and I'm so excited about it. It's Richard Spegal, author of Eternal Nights and the Wolves and Ravens trilogy. Now, Richard's path is interesting and the type of guest we love to have on here because he's had many transitions. He bridges two worlds that a lot of people don't often connect. He is a former officer in the Pennsylvania National Guard who served along the 82nd Airborne Division. Thank you for your service, my friend. And he understands leadership, discipline, risk, and survival, which we talk about in here all the time in very real ways. As a fantasy and paranormal author, and Richard, we're going to be talking about that transition, he explores morality, choice, truth, power, and what happens when human beings are forced to confront themselves. While his stories may be set in fictional worlds, the question underneath are deeply, deeply human. Richard, welcome to Notes from the Edge. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for being here. So, the first things first, I always talk about people's origin stories because we get a lot of people on here who have had transitions in their lives. So, how do you go from being in the military to being a fantasy and paranormal author?
Well, I've always been a writer ever since high school. It's just that it got regulated to like a background hobby kind of thing. Because, as you get older, you got to put food on the table and stuff like that. But then after the last couple of years in the service, I knew I was going to get medically discharged, and I spent a couple of years in a military hospital facility. So I had a lot more time. And then when they finally discharged me, again, more time. So I decided, let's do this full time now.
Nice, nice. What's the biggest challenge for you in your writing, or does it just flow for you? You say discipline, of course, is something you know. So, are you a very disciplined? I'm going to sit down and write 2 hours a day. How is your writing process?
Oh, my writing process is just completely undisciplined because a lot of it stems from a lot of the disorders and things that I have that make it more difficult for me to stay grounded in the real world, actually work to create all of these fantasy worlds and stuff that to me are just as real as everything else. So my biggest challenge when it comes to writing is like basically the opposite of writer's block. Because if writer's block is not knowing what to write, I have Three Stooges syndrome, where all of the stuff is stuck in the doorway, and there's so much of it, nothing can squeeze through. So I'll actually get confused as to what I'm actually writing at that moment. So
Gotcha.
it's kind of weird.
That's actually not weird at all for me. I'm an idea person, and I once had my shamanic trauma coach tell me this, and it helps me out a lot. She said, Lisa, not every idea is something you're meant to birth into the world. And that helped me a lot because now when ideas come, it's like, okay, I have this, but am I the human being meant to birth this in the world? So I totally get having so many ideas, you don't know where to go. I get it. So your stories deal with moral complexity rather than simple good versus evil narratives. Um, what do you think people are really searching for when they're drawn to stories like that live in kind of the gray that life really is?
Well, I think most people enjoy a realistic, organic story, whether it's visual media like TV and movies, or whether it's a book. The problem is, if you're under the age of 40, you've probably never seen one or read one before because they don't exist anymore. They haven't existed for a very long time because the entertainment industry has failed you. So
Mm,
unless you're looking at really old stuff, you have no idea what I'm talking about until you
mm,
experience it for the first time, and you're just like, oh my God, where has this kind of stuff always been? Because real life is gray, because nobody's immune to stress, nobody's really immune to loss and stuff like that. So everybody suffers either little bits or big bits throughout their lives. So your characters have to go through that, and most characters don't. not like when you're seeing it or you're reading it, the creators don't put that. So it makes them fake. And then that takes you out of the story. So I think people are drawn to wanting everything to be real and be organic. Let the characters tell the story. It's writing 101. It just hasn't been done for decades, at least not
And
correctly.
why do you think that is? What do you think happened? Do you think it's social media or attention spans, or why do you think that's been taken from us?
Let's see if I can answer that without saying anything that's not appropriate for a live stream, because I got a real quick answer to that question. Honestly, to be completely honest, rampant stupidity.
Gotcha.
People are being paid a lot of money to do something that they're not qualified to do, like stuff that high school students could do better. A lot of things, a lot of successful things are geared towards young audiences. And it's a business decision. It's a gimmick, because typically if something is geared towards a younger audience, it's going to make more money overall because there's more people involved. Like if you're going to take your kid to the movie, that's a second ticket for the parent.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a business decision. Now, and when something like that makes a lot of money, everybody else wants to copy it. So
Yeah.
everything else that comes later is again tamed down or geared towards a younger audience. And then, there are a couple of R-rated things out there that are successful, but most, even today, even with R-rated successful films, most professional production studios will do everything they can for that PG-13 rating because they think they'll make more money. Now, the fact that they lose tens of millions of dollars with every single thing they make over the span of years, they're still dumb enough to keep doing it. So I don't really know how it started. Social media was a big thing about it, because the bad thing about social media is that every person who screams has a voice. And unfortunately, because they're screaming the loudest, people listen to them and they don't stop to think nobody cares what this person says. If they cared, the movies would be successful. But everything fails because no matter how loud that person screams, they're only worth a single movie ticket.
Yeah.
So if only 1 out of 10 people listen to them, 90% of the people are not buying those movie tickets, so the movies fail. That whole modern audience thing, nobody actually wants that.
Yeah.
So social media did kind of screw that up for a little while.
Yeah, and that's a whole other podcast. Social media alone is a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
So, do you think readers are looking for permission to explore parts of themselves they don't normally acknowledge? Because I know you gear towards adults, right? So when you're doing your writing, for instance, in my memoir, I want people to see pieces of themselves in my personal stories. So are you writing specifically with that in mind, or are you just writing as the characters come and you create that emotional arc for your readers?
It's mostly the second thing. When I say, I don't know if it's fair, I used to always say geared towards adults, but I should say geared towards people with more mature tastes, because age isn't really a number, to be fair. But I focus on really just letting the characters tell the stories, because if the characters tell the stories, all of that other stuff comes out anyway.
Yes.
It's all very realistic and very organic. So just about anybody who's reading can see something of themselves in it, because of the way they experience loss and stuff like that. The fact that they talk like real people and act and think and make decisions like real people, which is something you don't really see. Typically, you'll see or you read something where you might like the characters, and then all of a sudden they become stupid for about 10 minutes because they have to make stupid decisions for the plot to happen. Because otherwise the plot wouldn't happen, because the characters are too smart for it. And that's the opposite of what you're supposed to do. The characters are supposed to determine the plot. That's why I don't really outline my books. I just let them happen.
I love that. I love that. Let it happen. Well, listen, you spent years in the military leadership, became an author. What did that experience teach you about human nature, and how do you use that knowledge of human nature in your stories?
I think as far as the human nature goes, it helped me to remove a lot of pretense. I noticed that after, because I was in for about 21, 22 years. And as I had been in longer and longer, I noticed that my writing kind of stopped beating around the bush, so to speak.
Mm.
So there's a lot less filler in my writing, which a lot of people will notice because I'm working with media companies as well. And taking a book into a screenplay is difficult because you have to cut out about half of the information to make it fit. And these professional companies, they can't figure out how to do it with my writing because there is no filler. There's nothing to cut. If you cut anything out of the book, the overall story suffers.
You
So
lose the voice. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it took us months to figure out how to do it, and it's typically
Wow.
a 2-week process. Um, and then from a mechanical standpoint, my military service helped a lot because, like with the Eternal Night series, since it's focused in the modern world, like being able to know the names of like equipments and weapon systems and things like that, I can like really detail the action more realistically than a normal person because I actually know all the words and stuff to use. So that
Oh, my
helps.
husband would appreciate that. It drives him nuts when there's inconsistency in it,
Yeah.
right? If like he's a mechanic, so if he sees a car and it's the wrong car, the wrong motor, so, I mean, he picks up on that. So he would certainly appreciate that about your book. So one of the themes I talk about a lot is performance versus truth, right? That's in my memoir, it's on the podcast. So many of us learn to play roles in order to survive. Have you noticed parallels in your characters you write, or masks that people wear in real life, or masks that your characters have to wear in order to survive?
I would say that's probably the most perfect thing you could have possibly said because that is the exact thing that writers and creators today don't do. Because, like, there's nothing wrong with writing a character to be almost perfect in public. Because, like you said,
Mhm.
we all wear those masks and stuff like that, especially when you're writing characters who are really important. Like in Wolves and Ravens, the main female character, Chin, the Raven Queen, she wears that perfect mask in public, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the truth comes on the private side. And as the reader or viewer or whatever, you can see both. And where most people screw it up is they portray the character to be almost perfect on the private side as well. That's fake because that's impossible. And nobody wants that. Nobody asked for it, and we all hate it. So on the private side, you see the truth, like how much she suffers, how the
Mhm.
stress of what she is, like she crying herself to sleep, actually like acting like she physically, she literally hates the world around her because of what it makes her do. But then on the performance side, she smiles, makes all the right choices, the perfect queen. So that is the dynamic that you have to create if you want a real character.
I love that because that's what we do in real life, right? That's what
Yes.
we have to do in order to survive in some situations. I love that. I love that because one of the things I talk about is high functioning survival, where it's polished veneer on the surface, right? From the
Right.
outside, but on the inside, there's a lot of internal suffering. So a lot of people think fantasy is escapism, right? But I believe that all stories, reveal truths that are difficult to discuss directly. What truths are you exploring through fiction that might be harder to explore in, say, an everyday conversation? Where do you get to go in your stories that maybe you wouldn't go in real life?
I think that a good story is both of those things because, yes, all of entertainment is escapism to a degree, whether it's a movie, TV show, a video game, a book. You're escaping from the real world. And that's not a bad thing.
Mm-mm.
I mean, unless you're doing it like 24/7 forever, but
Exactly. Like if you're doing
it's
it for a
not
month
a
straight,
bad
not
thing.
using the bathroom, you got a problem.
And where it can actually be helpful and a fiction story can be educational is if it is a true realistic and organic story where yes it is technically fiction but it could pass for the real world. So you're escaping from your world to spend time in another real world which faces all of the same truths that you would normally face, and you're doing it privately. So
Mm.
you don't have to do it where like there are things that you would say in public that you don't really agree with, but you got to say them. But now in your little escapism where you're reading this book, you can admit to yourself that you enjoy exactly what's happening. You can understand the realism and I go across all those lines of morality, drawing attention to things like mental disorders and issues up to like even suicide, rape, crucifixion, psychotic breaks. You know, my characters go through all of these things, and I hope to draw awareness to that because I think most people have some experience, either directly or indirectly, about that kind of thing, and it's portrayed so badly in the media. I have like an alternate objective of showing the truth of that to people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate that about what you're writing. I myself did suffer a full psychotic mental health crisis break. And there is a lot of stigma attached to that, a lot of humiliation attached to that. So thank you for wanting to educate people through your stories. And on your website, you did talk about the power of story. And I'm a trained storyteller, trained at university, and I believe that stories are our best teachers. Talk to me a little bit about, you know, some of the benefits of these stories that you write. What are we going to get out of them? Not just the story itself, but how's it going to help us as humans?
I think just being the truth. Nonfiction tends to be boring. So you go into nonfiction understanding that it's for a type of education, and there's nothing wrong with that because that's what you're looking for, but it can also put you to sleep. So you got to be in the right mood for it. So you can teach the exact same lessons through fiction in an entertaining fashion to where the person is completely immersed and facing, and like I said before, they're facing all of those truths that kind of like hit home for them, but they're seeing it through the eyes of somebody else. So they're seeing it from the perspective of another character, a character who is fake but is completely real in the story, is suffering from the same thing. Because we mentioned briefly the mental illness thing. Even today, so many of those people feel like they're alone and they never reach out. I have gotten feedback from people who have thanked me because they have seen themselves as not being alone because they connect with the fake character in one of my books. And that's like one of the best feedback things I could ever see is somebody actually thanking me specifically for that, because it gets a lot of the media will say like, quote, draw awareness to that stuff, but they portray it so badly that people with no experience think the wrong thing. Like they think that a psychotic break works out like that. They think that the media portrays bipolar as being angry and then happy, which is completely 100% false. So you need somebody to bring that truth as part of the story that they're telling, and it enhances the story because that's where the characters go anyway. And that's what I try to do.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. Thank you for your service in that way too, my friend. I really appreciate that. It's something I try to do too. So, okay, at the heart of Notes from the Edge, it's a question I often ask. Well, before we ask the last question, is there anything you want to add to people out there? Because you made the transition from going military to full-time writer. That's a scary thing to do for a lot of people. What advice would you give? And I'm picking up on this intuitively for somebody who listens to this later. What advice would you give to somebody who is on the edge of, I hate where I'm at, I hate my job, life's not going the direction I want? What are you going to tell them if they're feeling stuck? What do they do?
If we're not necessarily talking specifically transitioning into writing, just like in general transitioning to one thing to
Just
the
in
other.
general, say they're stuck in life and they want to make a change, but they don't know how. They're a little lost. They don't know what the first step is. What would you tell them?
I say the first step is that you need to understand what you want the end state to be. Like you want to make a change, you have to know what the other side is first. You can't just, because you have to be realistic. I mean, we're talking about adults here. And like I said a while ago, you got to put food on the table. So you can't just quit your job just because you hate it, because that's not going to work out for you. You have to know where you want to go. You have to take a deep breath, think about it, do some research, figure out the steps from where you are now to where you want to be. Take that one step at a time, and it will work for you. You cannot make emotional decisions, because you will end up in a much worse place than you were.
Ain't that the truth? You cannot make a clear decision from emotional dysregulation. If you were destabilized, that is not the time to get a divorce, guys. Just telling you. I
And make
love
sure
that.
make sure you're sober. We're talking about adults here. Don't be following through with stuff you came up with 8 beers in, because it's not going to work.
Oh, Richard, where were you? Like, I don't know, 15 years ago. Oh my goodness, you could have saved me some jail time. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. All right, listen, you've got what, 5, 6 books published? How many?
Six, with the most recent one a couple weeks ago. Yeah, 6 out.
Wow, you just launched a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, maybe like 6 weeks. It was like mid-May, something like that.
Nice. Congratulations. All right, where do people go? Where do people go to go ahead and purchase the latest book and then start working backwards or forwards with your trilogy?
I always direct people to the website, richardspegal.com.
It's a beautiful website, by the way.
The spelling of my last name is above my head. So, yeah, there's no I in my last name. But there's video trailers of everything. There's a bunch of behind-the-scenes stuff. The publisher outdid themselves. Of course, there's purchase links there. There's a lot of content. My Instagram is at Richard Spegal Books, and my Facebook, again, is based on my name, Richard Spegal. But the website is where most of the content is. I mean, of course, everything's on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and stuff like that. But the website's the best place to go, because you see everything.
Okay. And yeah, you get a taste for who you are as a writer too. Beautiful website. They did a really good job with that. All right. So at the heart of Notes from the Edge, one of the questions I always ask is, in your life, what did you perform in order to survive?
My writing. My writing is the only outlet I have, because like I said, I was removed from the service because of the disorders that I have. But in some ways, those disorders help my writing, but in a lot of ways, they hurt my existence in the physical world. But my writing is the only outlet for that. And I've been very fortunate, based on a lot of things that a lot of my doctors have told me, is that most people in my situation require full-time care. Whereas somehow I've directed everything in such a focused manner in my writing that I'm able to at least sort of get by in the real world. So I perform my writing to survive. It's not just a business for me.
May we dig you said something that I want to dig a little deeper on, and I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
I did have a full-blown mental health psychosis. I went into inpatient rehabilitation, dual diagnosis center for mental health and addiction, thinking I had a slight drinking problem and a bad marriage. And I came out with a chart this thick with a trauma bonding and codependency and CPTSD and borderline and bipolar. And it was a lot. It was a lot to absorb all at the same time. In addition, I have a congenital blood disease, so I end up hospitalized a lot. And I can see on people's faces, right? I've had many pulmonary embolisms. I've survived 10 events thus far with this congenital clotting disorder. I can see on people's faces, they turn a little white. They go a little dead when they start reading my psychiatric history. So for you, how did you get through the stigma that is attached to having mental health struggles?
By the time I understood my diagnosis, because from my perspective, now I understand what it all was. From my perspective, I always knew things were different, but I was also consistently outperforming everybody around me.
Mm-hmm.
So from my perspective, everybody else just isn't as good. And then as I got older and older and finally hit the flip side of that coin and was inpatient for a few weeks, and I got the diagnosis and the explanation, and learned that all of that stuff was all a production from mania. It just so happens that all of my professional career, I was in productivity-based employment. So mania is an asset.
Yeah.
But then the flip side of that ended up putting me into the hospital with like suicidal ideations and bipolar 1 and things like that. And I do know that there is a stigma attached to it. I just don't care because things are what they are, and I go where reality takes me. And I am fortunate enough that I have a larger support network than most people. I live in a home with 3 other adults. So there's always somebody that can kind of like keep an eye on me, because when I do sit down and actually write, mentally speaking, everything goes out of control. And there'll be about 6 weeks where I don't eat. I'm seeing things, I'm hearing things, I don't sleep. I'm a complete danger to myself. But then out of that comes a real story that happens to also be fiction.
Yeah.
But I have people that can keep an eye on me when I'm doing it. If I was living on my own in the same situation, I don't know if I would have survived this long.
Having the right kind of support structure that inspires, that supports, that doesn't judge, that emotionally validates. And yeah, it can be like, hey, looks like you're in a little bit of mania, but I totally get that tunnel vision. I really do. I totally get that tunnel vision. And here's where I've gotten to. I've gotten to also the place that I don't care, but I've also gotten to a place where I really like who I am. So it doesn't fucking matter, right?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like who I am. So all that other stuff doesn't matter. So I love that. You perform your writing in order to survive. Literally. My husband is a musician and he has mental health struggles that are different than mine. And his music is his therapy. Like he won't do therapy anymore. He's done. He spent a year in a lockdown inpatient rehabilitation, and won't do it anymore. So music is his performance that saves his life. So I totally get that. All right. Last question. What are we not talking about that we need to have more conversations about?
In general?
Yes, in general. What do you think we need to talk more about?
Not surprisingly, based on the conversation we've already had, the negative side of the morality line and mental health. People need to be more comfortable discussing mental health issues and disorders and things like that, because since people don't, like we said before, they rely on what the media teaches them, which is completely wrong. Like I use bipolar as an example because that's the most common thing you'll see portrayed in media, and I'm in the top 1% of severity of bipolar 1. So when I see people think that bipolar is happy angry, when emotions have exactly nothing to do with it in any manner whatsoever, but people don't know any better because we're not talking about it, because the one half doesn't even think to bring it up, the other half is too scared.
Well, tell us, Richard, tell us the difference. So it's not happy, it's not angry. What is it? What is the gray? Where is the gray? We were talking about gray earlier. Where is the gray with how your brain clicks and ticks?
Bipolar disorder is energy level. It has nothing to do with emotions. Certain emotions follow certain energy levels in people, but that has nothing to do with it. That is why bipolar depression is a separate medication from clinical depression. You can have bipolar depression and be happy. It has to do with energy levels. That's why when you come to a bipolar diagnosis, the only thing the doctor asks is mania. That is all that matters when it comes to bipolar. And mania is high energy levels. Your energy level is so high that you literally cannot control yourself. Doesn't mean you're happy, doesn't mean you're sad. You could be anything. You could go out
and still be in that energy level. Yes, you can feel any emotion and still be in that energy level. That's a great way to describe it. I love that.
And
So
it is very self-harming. People in that state will go out, they'll spend $100,000 in 3 days. They'll go on a drinking binge. They'll just drive for 30 hours, or very self-harming. They said, I am very, very fortunate that I am so focused that even at my worst, all I'm doing is just writing.
you're just channeling all that energy.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
very fortunate in that case.
I love that. I love that. Well, look, I'm excited to have my family pick up some of your books. Both my husband and my daughter are avid readers of fantasy. I prefer self help and nonfiction, but I'm going to check it out because I love that you are addressing topics like suicidal ideation, like psychosis, like mental health and mental struggles. That those are the things you are absolutely right. We need to be talking about more of. So, all right, everybody, please go find Richard's website. It is a beautifully done website. There's some amazing trailers on there. Pick up his books. Let's support him. He just had one launch 6 weeks ago. So let's help bring that up to a bestseller, which would be super, super, super exciting. And thanks for spending time with us today, Richard, sharing your story. Thanks for telling us where we can find you. Listen, guys, if today's conversation hit home for you, please share it out. We want this podcast to grow. We definitely want our guests to get something out of it, as well as you taking nuggets of wisdom that you can turn around and apply to your life today. So sometimes the stories we tell ourselves becomes prisons that we live inside. But sometimes they help us find our way home. Make sure you're telling yourself the right story. And always ask yourself, what did I perform in order to survive? I'm Lisa Lacy, writer, trauma educator, executive advisor, author of the upcoming memoir, Notes from a Certified Madwoman. Answer that question. Welcome to the Edge. We'll see you next time, guys. Richard, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.